Good morning, guys. Welcome back to another video. Part 2, getting this Duramax straightened out, get the heads back on hopefully, and maybe get it running by the end of the video. So yesterday I spent a lot of time just cleaning everything up. Heads are still at the machine shop, so I've just been focused on cleaning out everything that kind of sit in the heads and the valve covers, making sure we're putting it back together cleaner than it was when we took it out. So we got our rocker assemblies cleaned up, all the push rods. These little guys are all cleaned up. These were the dowels that sit in between the head and the block. The valve covers cleaned out pretty nice. We'll do one more once over once we're ready to throw them back in. The injectors. So the kit that I have came actually with new coppers, new O-rings, and even these little O-ring guys at the end. So we'll be able to freshen those all up. Those will be like new. I also pulled the batteries out. These are both dead. Somehow in like within 2 weeks of me leaving, they both got drained out. So we're gonna take those to O'Reilly's. If they can't charge them, we'll just have to buy new batteries, unfortunately. So what we gotta do today is freshen up the mating surface for the head meets the block. So I kind of stuffed paper towels in the holes that I can. Everything else, so all these little galleys and everything like that, we're going to be filling it with shaving cream. And then coming back into the garage, I have this knife honing stone. It's got 400 grit and 1,000 grit, I believe. Yeah. So with the stone, we're gonna be taking the 400 grit and going lengthwise down the side of the block, just cleaning it up, making sure we have no high or low spots. Try to get it as clean, neat, and level as possible. That way when we put the head back on, everything sits nice and we should have no problems. So yeah, I'm gonna fill everything with shaving cream, take the whetstone with some PB Blaster, WD-40, doesn't really matter, just get it a little wet and it'll help clean up the surface. And yeah, we'll be ready to set the heads when we get them back from the shop. Just spent a decent amount of time cleaning up this driver's side of the engine block. Everything was gone over with 400 grit and then 1,000 grit, then cleaned up with brake clean, the vacuum, and so forth. So yeah, pretty much you want to make sure everything's smooth, no high or low spots, and yeah, it doesn't have to be too crazy. You know, that gasket will seal pretty much everything up, but you don't want to put the head back on and then later on have an issue. So make sure you at least prep it a little bit. Now we got to go over, do the same thing on the passenger side, and then we're waiting on the heads. Okay, we just got the heads back from the machine shop, all resurfaced, pressure checked, and we should be good to go. I think they did new valve seals as well. So first things first, we got to get the exhaust manifold and everything else back on the heads. I want to go ahead and clean up all this old gasket sealer RTV stuff off the top of the head, and then we can get everything back assembled. Now, because I was in a rush when I dropped them off, I just gave it to them with the exhaust manifolds, the fuel rails, everything's still on the heads. So when they took it off, it's kind of my fault. It is my fault. But I essentially just got a box here with a bunch of bolts and nut assortment, and I don't really know where everything goes, so we got to figure that out as well. Not really too sure what happened to this fuel rail, but Looks like the connector broke somehow in transit, maybe. I don't really know. I'm hoping that we can still be able to plug it in. I'll just use some zip ties or something for now, because I don't think I can just buy a new connector without buying a whole new rail. Maybe I can. I'll have to look, but yeah. Not really too sure what happened to that guy there, but definitely broken off. If you can see inside, the prongs are still there, so we might be able to salvage it. But yeah, we'll see tomorrow. Okay, it's the next morning now. Last night we got the heads all assembled and we're pretty much ready to drop them in. I did one last once over on both sides of the engine block, put our dowels in, dropped the new head gaskets in, cleared it up. We should be ready to get these in once my buddy gets here to help me out. The only thing we can really do until he gets here, all these injectors, I do have new coppers and O-rings for them, so might as well get those replaced. And then once he gets here, we get the heads dropped in and start reassembling and maybe have this thing running. I'm gonna say maybe tomorrow if all goes well. Let's get these injectors refreshed and then just wait for him to get here. So these little copper ends here, these come off. We can replace them just like that. Try to get as much of this carbon stuff cleaned up as you can. Now we can take our new copper, slide it on there. Get it as far down as you can, and then you can take a little socket over the top and just kind of push it down on. Once that's seated all the way, move on to the O-rings. We got one little guy here on the end, and then this guy here in the middle. Replace those two, and this one will be refreshed. Look at this hot rod.
What's up, brother?
What's up, dude?
Long time no see, man.
I know. Look at this thing. You got it all decked out in frickin' Halloween stuff right now. Damn.
I think today I might pick up a Porsche.
No way?
Yeah. So.
What kind of Porsche?
2009 11. So it'll be fun. And then hopefully I get a 930 Porsche in the next few years.
That wasn't too bad.
No.
Passenger side's in, onto the harder, tighter side. With this side, because the one head stud's really tight behind the firewall, we're gonna put the stud down in the head before we drop it. Just kind of tape it in there, and that way, once it's set, we don't have to try to dent through the firewall to get the head stud in there. I think I forgot to hit the record button, but we just got the driver's side back in as well. Honestly, not that hard, eh?
Not really. No.
Yeah, once we got everything lined up with the dowels, it kind of dropped right in. I'm worried about these hard lines. I'm hoping I can still get these in with the heads in there. But yeah, other than that, just gonna start buttoning things up, cleaning out the heads, making sure they're good to go, and then we can set our valve lash. So right now I'm gonna start dropping these head studs down in the holes. The bottom side doesn't say anywhere in ARP's guidelines to use the lubricant, so we're just going to thread it in hand tight, and then we will lube the top and start torquing down all the head studs. Now there is a pattern for that, like any head. So looking at this guy here, if you guys want to take a screenshot of that, go for it. So they go 125 foot-pounds on the main studs and then 25 foot-pounds on the 4 M8s up on top. For the bigger head studs, I'm probably going to go 60, 90, and then 125 just to even it out. I don't want to go full 125 right off the bat. Definitely want to ease into it. All the nuts are now on the head, and we are ready to start torquing. So like I said, I'm going to start in the middle, follow the bolt sequence or the torque sequence. And then I'm going to do 60, 90, and then 125, which I think is the final one. So torquing these rocker bolts, you're gonna start at the center and work your way out. You're going to 30 foot-pounds. All right, we got the rocker assembly on the passenger side all done. I'm gonna go ahead, do the same thing on the driver's side, get that mounted up, and then we can start setting valve lash. All right, setting valve lash. I'm gonna try to explain this how I've learned it. Essentially, your push rods come up and they're gonna push your rocker arm down onto your valves. What you need to do to set your valve lash, essentially you'll take a little 12 thou on a feeler gauge, stick it under the back of the rocker arm on the valve side. You're gonna loosen up this 14mm nut on the top of the push rod, and you'll spin the threads with a flat blade screwdriver to where it'll be just tight enough where it's a little bit snug on the feeler gauge, and then you'll tighten the nut back down. Merchant Auto on their website has this nice little diagram that shows what ones to tighten when what cylinder is at top dead center. So when cylinder number 1 is at top dead center, you will adjust all the ones in red, and when number 4 is in TDC, you will do all the yellow ones. So to tell if you're in TDC for cylinder number 1, essentially when you spin the harmonic balancer, it's a 36mm 12-point socket, I believe. You'll align the two timing marks to TDC. If the cylinder number 1 push rods and valves aren't moving, that means that cylinder number 1 is in TDC. If you get it aligned, but you notice that for the past 90 degrees of rotation, the cylinder number 1 push rods are moving, that means that cylinder number 4 is in TDC. So, like I said, when cylinder number 1's in TDC, you do a certain amount of adjustments, and then when cylinder number 4 is in TDC, you do another amount of adjustments. It kind of makes sense. If you go on Merchant Auto's website, they have like a really good instruction guide. That's kind of what I used. We're in TDC for cylinder number 1 right now, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust all the red valves, I guess you could say. So right now it's way too tight, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen it up. You can see I got the feeler gauge in there now, and we can tighten it down. So you want it just snug enough where you can move it around. You want a little bit of friction on there, but you don't want it so snug that you can't get it out. So right about there is pretty good. Okay, so all the red valves are now adjusted. We're gonna spin the motor over 10 rotations, check it again, and then we'll move on to the number 4 cylinder valves. Once again, you just wanna make sure you leave a little bit of drag in that feeler gauge underneath the rocker arm. If you do 10 rotations and you notice any play in any of them, make a little adjustment, do it again, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So we just finished up setting the valve lash for all the valves. We can now drop the valve covers on. So I'm just gonna go ahead, make sure the mating surfaces are clean on both the valve cover and the head, and then we'll throw the new gasket in there, make sure your dowel pins are in, and we can drop the valve cover on. Okay, so another new day. Spent the last few hours just trying to button things up. We got the up pipes bolt back on. Fuel lines starting to go back in, and we're about to throw the injectors in. So yeah, it looks like a rat's nest, and I thought it was gonna be a lot harder than it was to get these back in the right spot, but it actually wasn't too bad. Everything kind of bolts back up pretty easily as long as you put it in order. So yeah, this coolant line is from the turbo. That was already in there. There's a fuel line, the small one there. That stayed in when I put the heads in because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get that in. These two lines kind of comes up here, runs down, and then they run through here. That one I put in first, and then everything else kind of sits on top of it. Pretty simple. We're gonna go and throw the injectors in on both the passenger and driver side, and then we can start getting the lines from the injectors to the rail. Now, there is a line underneath this banjo bolt, the line that goes down underneath that. It's a braided line, you can't really see it. I'm kind of a dummy. When I pulled the heads off, I left that line somehow bolted to the head, and it bent the metal part of the line where it turns into a banjo bolt. And yeah, it started to leak a little bit. So I bent it back. I'm not sure if it's gonna leak. It probably is. If it is, we're gonna have to dig back in here and replace it. But the local hose shop doesn't open till tomorrow, and it's like $86 online to order one. So it's in a really tough spot. I think I can get to it with like maybe a 1/4-inch ratchet. I don't know, but yeah, I'm hoping that we'll be all right. It doesn't leak, but if it does, yeah, we'll have to replace that. One thing I forgot to mention, just take some assembly lube, and when you put the injectors on, just kind of rub some assembly lube over the O-rings. Makes it go in a little bit smoother, keeps that O-ring nice and seated, and yeah, keeps it clean. So I'm gonna do the driver's side, we can get these bolted down in, and then we can get the lines over the top of them. Alrighty guys, first and foremost, I just gotta apologize for the lack of content putting this thing together. I've been scrambling to get it done. It's my only vehicle, and I need something to drive, so. Entire fuel system is good to go. Wiring harness is good on the passenger side. We got the fuel filter in, tensioner, this bracket's back in. We still got to do the power steering pump, and then obviously do the alternator, AC compressor on top. Thermostat housing we have yet to put on, but we have the cross pipe in. I still got to do the harness on the driver's side here. As you can see, it's kind of looking a little rough, but yeah, everything over here is good to go. Now, like I said, I think I mentioned about the fuel line down below. The good thing is that we don't really have to remove much to get access to it. It's pretty tight all the way down back in there, but if it starts leaking, that's what we'll have to do. Y-bridge is in. We're ready to install piping once I get the harness all buttoned up on the right side. Looks like we still need to do oil fill tube. My batteries are still over at O'Reilly's charging. They've been there for the past 2 days, so tomorrow I'll probably go pick them up. Hopefully they're not smoked, but if they are, we'll have to just pick up some new batteries. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep working on this wiring harness, and I'll pick up with you guys once we get that all buttoned up. This truck is pretty much ready to start. I need to do an oil change real quick. We gotta pick up the batteries at O'Reilly's. That's pretty much it. We gotta put coolant in it. And then once it's started, we'll bleed the system. Make sure that fuel line's not leaking. And yeah, we might be good. It did start raining, so I was just moving, trying to get it done. I did leave the intake pipe off. That way I can kind of still see down and see if that line's leaking. But other than that, yeah, everything is back together minus the batteries. So what we're doing here, we're just bleeding the fuel system. Obviously we got a lot of air in the lines, so just gonna pump this up until we start getting a steady stream of fuel out of our little bleeder screw. Then we'll tighten her back up, pump her a few more times, and we should be good. So of course it's leaking out of there, so I gotta dive in, try to figure out how to get that out. Probably gonna pull a charge pipe and see if I can somehow get down there with a ratchet and see if we can get that replaced. Just got back from House of Hose. Place is awesome, by the way. If you guys haven't checked it out, if you're in Spokane, they can they can make freaking anything with hose. So got this fuel line repaired, and I'm gonna try to slap it in the truck real quick. It's already almost 5 o'clock. We're losing daylight, and it's been raining all day. So I'm just gonna try to get this in. Maybe we can get this thing running. We got everything hooked up. We're about ready to get to the first start. So yeah, kind of nervous, but let's give this thing a shot. Oh, baby. It's a lot of fuel we got to build into the system, so Might have to bleed the fuel system a little bit more. Doesn't look like we're leaking anything though, so that's a good sign. There she goes. Let's go, baby! Finally got this thing running. It's a damn good feeling too. Doesn't look like we have any leaks yet. We gotta let it warm up, get everything burped through, but sounds good, sounds healthy. I'm gonna shut her off, check the oil level, make sure we're good. And yeah, we'll go from there. Next morning, we're gonna get a little cold start action and then check for leaks one more time. Then we can get her out of this area. I want to get the headache rack back on. We got to get the inner fenders, the flares back on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll get it set up for alignment. I got to go get some stock wheels for it because it's too wide right now to fit on anyone's alignment rack. Let's get this thing fired up this morning. Hopefully she starts up and we can continue on with our day. So right now it looks like we got no engine lights, nothing like that, just my tire pressure light that's always on because we got a bad sensor, but other than that, we're looking pretty good. Headache rack's back on, flares are on, inner fenders are in. Just got to get in alignment, get the exhaust welded up because there's a few hangers that are a little bit screwed up. And other than that, that's pretty much it to get it back on the road and good to go. I'm going to wrap this video here. We're going to be starting the hatch build probably tomorrow, maybe tonight if we get to it. But yeah, super excited to start that obviously. I'm going to go get some lunch. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.